So we are, we've got a recording of this, and then of course, like last week, the lovely Donna will send it all out with the PowerPoint slides as well. So you don't need to take all the notes. We'll share those as well, but and then of course the audio recording and video as well. Perfect.
Excellent. We might kick off then, Hannah. I know today you've got an action-packed session, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to our second workshop today around restarting and communicating to the domestic travel market, which is really important. And I know Hannah's done a quick little shift this morning in light of the announcements last night by the New South Wales government to put a starting time frame around how leisure travel may start to commence in New South Wales from June 1, and we'll still wait for some further clarity around what that might look like, but exciting times to see the industry starting to move. Again, just Hannah's touched on, we are recording this, we will distribute this for you, and again, really pleasing to see we've had around 120 register for this session again today, and the feedback from the last session was fantastic. So thank you all for providing really positive feedback, but also a range of questions, which I know Hannah's going to spend the first part of this session addressing some further questions that came in following our last webinar. Again, I suppose just for moving forward for the final webinar as well, make sure you do submit any of those questions. And certainly, I know Hannah's going to allow about 10 minutes at the end of today's session, hopefully, if we go to plan, to address your questions and answer any of those that come through. So over to you, Hannah, because I know that today there's a lot on the agenda and there's an enormous amount of really useful insights that is really important for the operators. So Hannah, off to you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for that intro. So before I share my screen, I guess just some housekeeping. Those who played along last week will know there's the Q&A function just at the bottom of the chat, the bottom of the screen, and there's the chat function too. So as we go along, you can either put your questions into the Q&A, so only I can see those, or into the chat if you want to put it somewhere more publicly. I really love the session, the Q&A that we did at the end of last week, and I think we got a lot of value out of that. So I really want to allow enough time there, because I think it's so great when we get to do those sort of really personalised questions. And if you do have questions, please put as much detail as you can about your business, because that will allow me to give you the best answers directly for you. So, if your question's about something, if you let me know if you're in accommodation or a tour, I can really customize that answer for you as well. So just bear with me. I'm just going to share the screen, which is, I'm always nervous. It's going to swap. So I think you should be able to see that now. Let me hit it from the beginning. Perfect. So just to, I guess, to dive straight in. Mark, can you just give me a thumbs up? You can see the screen? Yep, beautiful, good. I'm always nervous. I'm somehow showing you, how many tabs I've got open on my disgusting desktop. So I'm glad we're in the right place. So today, what we're going to focus on in webinar 2 is sort of that more intermediate step. So restart. What does your communication structure look like as we're getting ready to welcome domestic travellers? So at the time of preparing this, we had a very clear position in New South Wales and Victoria, but as of this morning, it's become quite unclear, I guess, with the announcement of the 1 June date for New South Wales. So as we sort of move through, if we, and particularly in question and answers, if we've got any specific questions, we'll need to, I'll need to defer some of those to Mark, because I know he's been in contact with Destination New South Wales this morning, and a lot of operators have questions, and we just, because it only came out this morning, we do need some time to work through what that directly means for all of you. So we might not have all of the answers on those things, but I can assure you that the stuff we're going to go through today is really applicable for all markets, and what we're trying to do is get you reactivation ready, essentially. So where we sit, I I guess in terms of the webinars is we're right here in the middle in this restart phase. So we spent last week going through a couple of communication structures that you can put in place. And now what it's about is how do we bed those down so that we're ready for this reactivation? Because what we know is that when travellers can travel again, or when restrictions get lifted, it's too late to be coming up with what we're going to say to them. What is that first picture that you put out on social media? What does that first e-newsletter say? We want to have them in the drawer, to quote Mark. He talks about putting everything into the drawer, and that's really important so that when things get ready to go, you're not scrambling, you're not worried about what do you need to put out first, or what are your first steps. So I'd really love you to walk away with sort of a 5-step action plan, as so you know exactly when these restrictions get lifted, when it's really clear what you can do, that you know your next steps, because we hope that you're going to be busy and you're going to have a lot of operational things to think about. The last thing you want to be worried about is, what am I going to put out in my e-newsletter? What am I going to say on social media? So someone very kindly described, put this as a question, and I think it sums up exactly what I'm going to talk about today. And it's, how do I get this show on the road? So that's what we're really going to focus on. We're not going to focus so much on the pandemic. We're going to focus on what it looks like reactivating out of it. But first, I really wanted to focus on, just loop back to the biggest question that we had after last week, which was how to do Facebook acquisition. So I know I had a couple of calls about this, and I know certainly Donna and Mark did as well. So I wanted to really walk you through this in a step-by-step as a bit of a hangover question from last week before I dive into this week's material. So how do you acquire contacts? How do you acquire new followers on Facebook? And this also applies for Instagram, although it's slightly different. You can't acquire followers on Instagram through Facebook Ad Manager. What you can do is you can acquire engagement. So likes and comments, which then in turn leads to followers on Instagram. So just to call that up out front. So last week I was talking about these incredible cost per clicks or cost per leads, and they were sitting under 20 cents. Look, they've gone up in price since then. It's a bit like the stock market. What you see one day is not what you see the next day. So for that client that we had the amazing results for, we're now looking at a cost per click of 76 cents. So if you it's still an amazing result. It's just not quite the gravy train I was talking about last week for this particular client. But that's not to say that it won't be for you. So since last week, I've started an acquisition campaign for the team at Visit Murray River, and they're sitting under 30 cents at the moment. So that's a really good result. The usual cost per click, I would say, is about $1. Okay, so I've said it's good. How the hell do you do it? Let me walk you through it. And this is, let me just preface this by saying the first step is the hardest. Everything else makes a lot more sense. And if you can get through the first step, you'll be fine. So you need to go through Ads Manager. And this is the first step to doing any acquisition campaign. You can see down here where I've circled here, Boost Post. This is not boosting a post. This is called the front end of Facebook. Boosting a post gets more people to see your post. That's great, but that's not acquisition. That's not performance marketing. That's not technical ad management. You have to be accessing it via this back end link. So business.facebook.com. If you've never been in before, you will need to set it up. And it is, I'm not going to make any excuses for it. It is an incredibly clunky system and it's very confusing. So don't do this in a rush. Make sure you allocate enough time and you're feeling in a patient mood to do it if you haven't ever looked at that before. So this is what the back end looks like in Ad Manager. You'll come through to a portal that looks like this. It's numbers, it's spreadsheet, and it's not visual. So this is why a lot of people struggle with it. So what you're looking at as soon as you come into this, if you want to do acquisition, and please, I am sending all of these slides, so you'll get this step-by-step breakdown and you can follow these. You're checking that this is your page. So this is my Ads Manager account. So I can tell that I'm going to be running an ad for Media Mortar up here, not one of my clients. What I want to do is I want to create, so that little green box there, and I want to create a campaign. So that's how I set things up internally. Once you're there, you get given this page, which is probably the most visual part of this whole platform, which says, what do you want to do? So if we're wanting to do acquisition, which is what I'd recommend everyone do everyone do in this phase to whatever capacity you can firstly afford at the moment, because this is paid advertising now. This isn't just organic social media reach. what you're wanting to do is click engagement. So you've got all of these other ones that you can do if you want to experiment with other different Facebook types. So you remember last week I talked a lot about awareness versus conversion. So once you get to a conversion base, you can play with these fun tools over here. But at the moment where we are in, I guess, the travelers booking cycle, and where we're feeling with the sentiment at the moment, is people are scared to travel still. So it's still very much in a consideration phase, which is just, let's consider your product first. So these are your different options you can do. But if we want followers, what we're looking for is that engagement there. So that takes you through to this next page here. So you've got 3 different types of engagement, but the gravy train, or the one that we want at the moment, is called page likes. So just make sure that's hit there. What you can do then is you can set your budget, and you've got 2 options here with a budget. This is where people, I think, get a bit scared with Facebook, is they think that they're going to spend all their money, and it's physically not possible unless you stuff up this step. So you've got the 2 options of a lifetime budget, or you can have a daily budget. So a daily budget is if you said that I've got $500 a day to spend on your Facebook ad. So that's how people run into trouble with their marketing, or their budget blows out. But you're going to know pretty quickly, because Facebook takes the money off your credit card, and you have to do this by a credit card. It'll take it off every single day. So you'll know if you've stuffed this up very quickly. So what I always do is I opt for a lifetime budget opposed to a daily budget. And that always gives me, it's a rule of thumb we have in our office across all accounts. So I know that we're never going to stuff up this step and end up losing all of our money on this. You can set a lifetime budget as little as $1, but you will get what you pay for. So this helps you make some sort of I guess you can test and learn with your budget. You can see if it's working. You can see if it's not working. It's proportionate. So, if you spent $50, if you spend $100, you should be getting double the results as well. So you can kind of make some assessments there with what's your sweet spot, or how far are you going to spend, or how much money are you going to allocate per month or per quarter or per year to this kind of activity. I set these up with sort of a campaign period of generally no more than a quarter. And the reason I do that is you don't know what you're going to be doing in the future, and you might want to change your advertising and the things you want to be doing. So that's how I would recommend you do it. So step 4 is setting your campaign date. So basically over here, what I've said is I want to drive likes to this page. I don't want to drive it to any of the other pages that I run. And then you get the option of automatic placements and manual placements. So the only difference is that Facebook will do automatic placements. It decides where people see them. Manual placements is you decide. I always opt for Facebook's recommended solutions, and there's a few reasons for this. Firstly, they know best. They created the algorithm. I think it would be foolish to think that I would know anything more than the Facebook backend people. And also what they do is they create dynamic ads. So what I mean by this is they'll swap around your creative and work out which one performs the best, which placement is performing the best, and then they'll stop placing the ads in the spots on Facebook that aren't performing for you. And this is really important, because you could have 3 different placements and you think one looks more beautiful than the other, but actually you're getting the results in a different place. So Facebook will work that out for you. And Facebook wants you to succeed because they want you to keep making money, or they want to keep taking your money so you make money. So everyone sort of wins. So I really encourage just trusting that recommendation. Setting your campaign period. So I would do, a month or up to a quarter. I wouldn't recommend doing anything more, because you might want to change things. Of course, you can change this at any time throughout the campaign, but I sort of like to have a bit more sort of clarity, so I can sort of run an end of campaign report and you've got a decent period to look at there. Step 5 is making your creative. So this is the actual ad component. So you get a couple of different options here with a likes campaign. You can do a still image, or you can upload 3 or 4 images and Facebook will turn it into a video for you. So you don't actually need to you don't even need a video there. If you've got one, that's great, but Facebook will actually turn a couple of videos into like a beautiful slideshow that overlays. And there's some incredible free templates in there that, you know, you can pop in your logo and a little call to action. So this is the bit where you get to be quite creative. You've also got over here all of your specs that you need to upload your creative. So that's your visual material in. And then over here, what you get to see is you get to have a look at it. You get to see it on desktop, or you get to see it on a mobile there. So this is just a little example from Visit the Murray's current acquisition campaign that's in market at the moment. So that's sort of that's the high line of how to do it. It is fairly intuitive once you're in. And as I said, it's that first step that is the hardest. Step 6 is setting your targeting. So this is almost worthy of its own 1-hour session. So I'll keep this fairly high line and Facebook has a lot of prompts to help you through. And this is, who do you want to see the ads? So this is a screen grab from my ads manager. And the reason I'm quite targeted with who I've got, I have, as a tourism content marketing agency, the people who I want to see my ads are always travel and tourism page admins. So I have quite a small group there. And then I've set a geographic radius here. Now I have different sets of creative for different parts of the country. So I have one for North Queensland, I have one for New South Wales, and I have one for Victoria. So the if I go back, hang on. If I go back, here, when I'm making the creative, what I have up here is something, say it was New South Wales, I'd say, hey, New South Wales tourism operators, do you need help with your marketing? Contact us, or like and follow us for free marketing advice every day. Then I create a separate piece of caption and creative that goes out to Queensland, Southeast Queensland, that says, hey, Brisbane tourism operators, do you need help with your marketing content and creative? So I make it really personalized. So I have different ad sets for different regions, which is going to be really important potentially for you, or what we're seeing is if Victoria's got very different rules now to New South Wales, you will need 2 different ad sets. So getting this targeting piece correct is really important. So I would certainly for you have 2 different ads, one for New South Wales and one for Victoria, with different captions and perhaps different images, so that they're getting different messages, if that makes sense. But like I said, this is quite a complex area, and I could spend an hour on just how to set this targeting up. But Facebook is fairly intuitive to some extent once you're into this little page here, and they'll give you some prompts there as well. Then your last step is just to check that it's live. So you'll know it's live when you have a green one here. So this one I can see is in review, and then once it's published, it will say published. And if at any point I don't want to continue with it, I just toggle here and that will turn it off, and then I'll see something there that says off. So if you've got something live, it's not performing, or you've spent a lot of money and it's not working for you, and you decide you want to pull it, it's very easy. You're not stuck to the end of the campaign doing it. So it's a relatively risk-free area because you have so much control over it to turn it off. The only thing that you're probably going to waste is your time in the first instance, and just keeping a close eye on it. You shouldn't waste too much money with this. That said, I always recommend, if you really want results, give this to someone who does this every day to do. It's quite complex. If you really want results, as I said, I could spend an hour on targeting and barely scratch the surface of it. And we haven't even got into complex things like retargeting off your email newsletter and things like that. That are all possibilities with this acquisition. But I hope that gives you quite a high-line step-by-step guide. And if you walk through it and you've got these slides in front of you, I'm really confident you'll be able to do some form of acquisition yourself. So with that in mind, I want to dive into to this week's webinar. So how to re-engage with people after COVID-19, or as people are able to travel, is probably a better way to phrase that. So I think it's just important to really call out here that all crises have phases. So we're just moving into a slightly different phase here. And what we know is there is going to be a phase now of communication that will need to go out. It's probably not right now, but it's going to be in the next, I really hope in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months, certainly. That is a book now, travel later message once those restrictions are really clear across the board. So once that has been announced, you need all of this information just to be able to pull out and put into your comms plan. So restrictions at a glance as at May 15, when I was preparing these slides, have obviously changed as of this morning. So in Victoria, still not allowed to travel. In New South Wales, we have been told as of this morning, it's a 1 June date. So and then what we can see is across the rest of the country, it is different. So if you're sitting in a area where you do have travellers traditionally from other states, you do need to be on top of their restrictions as well. So it just becomes more important to get that segmenting of messaging right. And segmenting just means the same message shouldn't be going to Victoria as is going to Queensland or is going to New South Wales. So staying on top of this is really important. As far as an action step goes, what you need to be doing now from an operational perspective is experience planning. And this is something that's really not for anyone other than yourselves and your business to be working through, because you're at the coalface of it and you know your business better than anyone else. So the questions I'd be asking if I was you is, what should I be doing? What were you doing pre-COVID-19 that you want to be doing in the future? What don't you want to be doing in the future in your business as we go back to, the new normal, whatever that looks like? Reading your reviews, seeing what people liked, seeing what people didn't like, because the things that people weren't liking, I wouldn't be bringing them back into the fold of your offering if you can avoid it. Will you be going back to full team capacity, or has this sort of forced downturn and forced break given you some opportunities to scale back the team or streamline your operations? I would be getting my team together and making this a ground up approach, not a top down one. And this is really important because your employees will be the best people and have the best understanding to identify some of those weak spots. Obviously, as the business owner or the manager, you need to take control of that, but they can often see the weak spots because they're in the day-to-day of it. Have a look at the way you need to be asking the questions, like how are you going to be addressing things like deep cleaning and social distancing in your business? And what is the standard operating procedure around this? Because this is grey area, but it's really on every business owner, and the government's been quite clear. It's on the business owner to dictate what that looks like in the day-to-day. There is not going to be, a tourism police officer who comes around and helps every business with how this rolls out. You need to be creating these rules and procedures for yourself and making them, enforceable within your own business. I would be writing an action plan that anyone in the business can pick up and use about these experience planning changes to the way you've traditionally done stuff. And importantly, some businesses are going to be required by law to have a safety plan to be able to trade, but really all businesses are going to be encouraged to have one. And that's really important, that I'd be spending my time right now getting that safety plan written, because it's quite, they're not onerous, but they are detailed. So the government, if you haven't already seen, has made a business safety plan, which is fantastic. It's got lots of prompts to prepare your workplace and prevent reinfection. And, it's down to everything like, where is the hand sanitizer kept? What happens if someone gets sick? Where do they get isolated to? So having those tools, or having that checklist available and everyone in your staff completely able to recite every element of that is going to be very important in coming back. As a word of warning, I would just err on the side of caution with sharing any of this intimate detail about how you're going to be, how you're COVID safe planning with the general public. To some extent, you don't want to be publishing that too widely. And I say this because I've been working with an operator who published their deep cleaning practices for their accommodation business, and it was in a little bit too much detail. And now everyone's aware that they weren't washing their doona covers before this thing broke out, and it sort of created quite a lot of negative customer trust with this particular business. So I would just be keeping this as a very internal document and being very selective with the things that you bring forward as proactive measures in terms of your deep cleaning practices. Getting this right is important, and this is and what I really mean by this is, as a tourism industry, we can't afford to be the ones who got this wrong, because we know tourism is a good cost to the economy, and we need to model best practice. The last thing we'd want is to be on the news as, the tourism operators of the Murray River are the ones who, who brought back COVID-19 or had a cluster outbreak. So we need to be at the forefront and we need to take this stuff incredibly seriously, and model best practice, because as an industry, we are so well loved and well liked in the economy that, you know, we have a duty and an obligation to the rest of Australia to get this right. From an operational perspective, what I'd be doing right now is I'd be updating all of my hours and telling people. So this is in Queensland, as an example, we got the green light on one Friday that we would be able to travel from 15 June. This is an operator who is based in Toowoomba, had their website already skinned to say they'd be open from June 19 that Saturday. So within a 24-hour turnaround, he was able to reskin his website. And I just found it and just thought that was such a brilliant example of proactive behavior. So what we know is, you know, is as soon as restrictions are lifted, what is your website going to say? So have that copy on hand, have it in the drawer so that you can pull that out. Have your web developer's number handy. Tell them that you're going to have to reskin the website with a COVID message once the position is clear between Victoria and New South Wales, and have that ready to go. I'd also say that there's lots of grey areas to the restrictions across the country. So please articulate your position within that as well. So if you're sitting in an area that, you know, maybe some things are allowed on your property, like the restaurant, but the accommodation is closed, just that needs to be spelt out for people, because it becomes quite complicated and everyone's quite scared about getting it wrong. So articulating your understanding or your positioning or what you're doing and telling people is really important there. It's important that you check all the sites that you've listed your hours on and your COVID response on. So doing a Google of yourself, because it's not just your website, it's your Google My Business listing, it's your social media, it's, you know, your contact hours are all over third-party sites like Zomato and TripAdvisor and Booking.com, things like that. So making sure all of your accounts are completely up to date is really important as well. So please Google yourself in this time to make sure that it's there. From an operational perspective, what you also need to do is you need to communicate your launch and what it means to the customers. So I'd be preparing an email newsletter to my existing customers, to my database, and I'd be sharing what my launch plan looks like. So I'm going to go into some detail about email marketing and what that might look like, but you certainly need to be starting to build this launch plan now. What's it going to look like for your customers and how are you going to communicate that? This is an example launch announcement. We know we're all going to be able to trade again. And what I love about this example is this is just a cafe. It shares that it's going to be open. It shares that they can only open for 10 people. So customers might need to wait for a longer time to get seats at the table. They also acknowledge that the customers' patience and support is much appreciated. So for me, this is just a brilliant example of a local cafe who's done a great piece of customer comms there. I would guarantee this, you know, 3 short, you know, paragraphs there, they probably took about 25 to 30 minutes to write. So getting those messages banked up, putting them into a Word document so you're ready to go once your restrictions or once your position is incredibly clear to just put out to the public is going to save you so much time in the long run, because you don't want to be doing these kinds of messages on the fly. They're too important to get wrong. So I want to do a deep dive into what email communications would look like post-COVID-19. And I want to focus on emails this week, because email marketing has one of the highest ROIs of any form of marketing that you can do. So across the board, industry-wise, for every $1 spent on email marketing, you generally return $44. So it's a really great tool to be using. So I want to go through a couple of just general rules about email marketing to put into this. So only talk about the things that are relevant is your number one piece. So we all received thousands of COVID-19 emails at the start of this, which had no real relevance. So please don't send another pandemic email just because everyone else is doing it. What you want to be doing is communicating when you have something useful to say. So preparing your launch email is going to be very critical over this next week or so for you, so that when the position is clear, you have something to go directly out to the customers with. Rule 2 is to format your email. So unfortunately, when COVID started, everyone pumped information out that was really quick. And so there was some pretty ordinary formats. We all would have seen them. You know, I unsubscribed from probably hundreds of emails over that time that didn't even know I was subscribed to, but they were telling me about their hand sanitizing policy, and I was out. I really encourage you to use bullet points to remember that most people are actually reading their emails on their phone. So most businesses that I work with only ever test their emails or their template when they do a test send. They only test it on the desktop. They don't ever have a look on the phone. So that becomes a real problem. So people who read in G Suite, as an example, as an email host, they can see emojis, but anyone in Outlook can't. So using your phone to test your sends is really, really important. It's important that emails that are formatted incorrectly get deleted. They get deleted. It's brutal after 3 seconds. So getting that right is so important, because people won't have time to do the right click download images. So please test in your phone. And if you're not getting the results you want out of your CRM or your e-newsletter provider, please get in touch with them, because they do have technical teams who can help troubleshoot your problems there and will be able to make your formats look better. A couple of simple formatting tips. Spend your time getting your email subject right, because your open rate depends on them. I would upweight. I would spend 70, if I'm doing an email for a client, I would spend 70% of my time on the email subject line and 30% on everything else. Because if you don't get them over the line with that subject line, they're not going to read the rest. Remember to keep it short and sweet. So people are reading on a phone, so they've got 25 to 30 characters tops. I see some people put a novel into their subject line, or they put the whole first paragraph in there. It's just not good practice. Keep your call to actions front and center. So make sure people are clear what you want them to do from the website. And a reminder again to test your sends. There's too many going out at the moment from really big businesses, to be honest, that are just ordinary. And it's because they haven't spent the time in the testing phase. Rule 3 with emails is to link out of your email to offline sources. So what I mean by this is, don't keep all the content in your e-newsletter. You need to be driving them back to your website, or to somewhere that drives a sale, or somewhere that's got more information, whether that's your social media or a YouTube account or anything like that. Because what we're looking for is, we should be able to correlate with your email sends. We should be able to hop into your Google Analytics and see that there's spikes in the time spent on website. There's spikes in how many people visited your website. So using your email newsletter as a way to get people to your website is just another way to get them to convert. It's another way to get people to buy. Please also remember to never attach a PDF to a newsletter. And I've seen so much of this done over the break. I say over the break, everyone's been talking about COVID like we've all had time to learn Spanish and, upskill in all these things. It has not been a break for any business owners. But I've seen over the COVID period that everyone's been attaching PDFs of their policies. A PDF attached to an e-newsletter is the fastest way to end up in a junk mail inbox. So what you want to do is drive to an online source that's out of your email program itself. So if you've got on your website a tab down the bottom, see how it says perhaps like, see how we're managing COVID-19. You can click on that, and that's where you can find all of that great information that you've prepared, with some details about your safety plan, but not so much detail that people start to question how clean you were beforehand. So you want to strike that right balance there. And rule number 4 is to ask for feedback. So this is something I've seen a few businesses do really well, and one that I wish more businesses did, is no one's got the answers on this. No one's ever marketed through a pandemic before. So please ask your customers, what you should be doing. I love this example from this company called Ref. They said, I'm not exactly sure what's appropriate for a company like ours to be posting right now. What's resonating with you? And they've asked their customer for feedback. So if you're not sure, why not throw it to the group and get them to tell you what they'd like from you right now? And then you'll be on a much better, you'll have much higher engagement, and you'll get much better results out of what you're doing there. So what would I do? So a couple of people have asked me, well, what should I put in? Like, what should I put in my business? So I'm going to pretend that I'm an accommodation provider. This would be my step-by-step post-COVID e-newsletter that I'd put out. I'd make my first paragraph a brief acknowledgement of the situation. We've all we're all experiencing the pandemic, so we don't need to go into too much detail about it. I'd then have a beautiful big picture. then I put another paragraph about how excited I am to be getting back to business as usual. And I'd put in a couple of little things about what we're going to do to make it safer for you. So whether that's hand sanitizer, deep cleaning measures, and I drive any conversation about this offline. You know, I'd say if you've got any questions or queries, or you've got any concerns about coming to stay with us and what we're doing, please don't hesitate to give me a call, or please don't hesitate to send me an email. So get that offline there, so you can have those sorts of conversations one-on-one with people. Then I do another beautiful big picture with some things to see and do in the region. So what we know is we need to be increasing that awareness and that consideration to come to the Murray. So it's not just enough to promote your product. We all benefit. A rising tide will lift all the boats if we promote all the things to see and do in the region. So you don't even need to create this content yourself. I know certainly Destination New South Wales and Visit Vic have lots of blog posts and lots of material on this. Certainly the team at Murray River would have information from the Traveller's Guide and things like that can be embedded into your email, so that you can share some 10 things to do in your town and things like that. I give your readers a reason to visit now. So maybe something to do with the seasons. It's getting chilly. You're close to the snow. Maybe it's something to do with fire pits, toasted marshmallows, and then I give them a reason to keep your email. So I love a recipe share. I think it's a really great fit for tourism, or it could be a cocktail share or something like that. A school holiday tip, just something that's aligned to your target market there. What CRM would I use? So someone asked, what's a cheap one? How do I get the best bang for buck? Look, HubSpot's I've linked here their top 10 resources. The two that I love are MailChimp and Campaign Monitor. That's not to say the others aren't good. They're the ones that I predominantly use, but you've got to remember that I don't use I don't have a booking system directly, like a BookEasy or a Resdy or something like that. So whatever's going to be easiest for your business and speaks to the other tools in your business. So these guys are great for my business, but that's because they plug into the third-party software that I use. So have a look at those top 10 there. And if you need any recommendations, I'm very happy to point you in the right direction there. So I want to do another little deep dive in social media, because I think a lot of people got value out of some of those ideas that I shared last week. So as we sort of move closer to the book now, travel later, what does that look like? Just to reiterate, and I do think it's important to reiterate some points, because marketing, if nothing else, is a lot about repetition. You can't afford to stop marketing right now. So please, if you have, or you're still scared, please, I implore you to get back onto social media, because what we need to do is we need to get that content ready for this next phase. So as you do this, you need to think like a customer, you need to speak like a customer, and you need to act like one of your customers to get this tone right. So a lot of marketing, and this graph over here on the left, a lot of the goal of social media isn't actually to sell, it's just for brand awareness. And this is regardless of COVID-19. So all we're trying to do is get people to consider coming to buy with you. So it's it's a very lovely area and a lovely piece of messaging. We don't actually need to be doing a hard sell on anything right now. So what would that look like? I wanted to show you this example. I don't know how the audio is going to work, but I'll just play, and it's a lo-fi example of a property in Charlotte Plains and a little Instagram post they put out. I think a lot of people have been really scared about production value over this, because we're in a position where, if you rely on user-generated content, say for your social media, you haven't had travellers, so you don't have good pictures from them. You haven't been able to get a professional photographer or a videographer because they're not allowed to travel. But this is just a lovely handheld shot on an iPhone piece of content that I would strongly recommend. This is a best case example. I had nothing to do with it, found it online and thought, wow, if only every operator I worked with did this. So I'll just play this, and hopefully the tech works. So it's very simple. She just says, I don't know whether it was the audio was good enough. She says, "Hi guys, this is Charlotte Plains. Please come and visit us. The sun is shining, the water's running. Please come to Charlotte Plains in Outback Queensland. We're just near here." And it's such a simple, you can see it's just shot. Someone's holding an iPhone. It's not complicated stuff. So please don't let production quality get in the way of doing something. For once we get to that point where we can book now and travel later, what I'd encourage you to do is to create some Canva templates. And the time to create the Canva templates is now. If you've got more time on your hands, now is the time to build them, because anyone who's used a Canva template, as lovely and as easy and as user-friendly as they are incredibly time consuming. So give people, with this, you want to state your position, make it super clear. So, South Australia parks are now open, book with confidence. And what I love with this message down the bottom is it just takes that pain point and it hits it straight on the head. So book with confidence. You can change your bookings up to 72 hours prior to arrival. So run at those customer pain points and make tiles and things that can do that heavy lifting on the communication for you. But as I said, this stuff takes time, so you want to be doing it now. We know the direction we're moving in. We just don't know the date. So there's no reason why we can't get this stuff, as Mark would say, straight into the drawer. What I love is another example is giving people free value. So giving people a reason to stay tuning along. So as an example, share a recipe, give people a detailed itinerary for things that they can do for a day trip, or giving them a list of local businesses that they can experience when they're on the ground with you and asking them to save it down later. So giving people just that reason to follow and stay along for this journey. I love this as an example, is to show people that you haven't been twiddling your thumbs over this time. So a lot of people, I guess, have gone quite quiet, which kind of makes to the customer, it kind of might feel like your business is stalled, or it could be a little bit stagnant. So show people what you've been doing. What projects have you been up to? Have you been renovating anything within the business? How have you been keeping active or the business, the things all ticking over so that you're ready to welcome people. People love progress. People follow progress, and they want to support progress. So try and bring those messages through your social media as we're moving closer to that go live date. And the other tip is so simple. Say thank you, because customers don't need to spend money with you right now. In fact, they don't have the money to spend with you right now for a lot of them, but they're coming because they want to support local business. So I don't think you can ever have enough thank yous to your customers right now. Thank you for spending, thank you for supporting us, and thank you for, keeping our business running. Those sorts of messages are so well received right now. So I think that's an important thing to bring through. I want to look at another deep dive, which was a topic that we talked about last week, which was supporting other local businesses. And I think you should be engaging with them like your business depends on it, because probably as we come out of this, it likely will. So there's a lot of ways that you can support other businesses on social media. So you might have seen, if you're really good with your Insta stories, you would have seen that they've released these stickers that support small business, and you can give a shout out to all the small businesses in your local area, and then Instagram pulls it through to a feed that sits at the start of your Insta stories, which is a great way to do it. I think it's important in your marketing and your messaging just to remember that it's not just you that's been affected by this. It has been everyone else. And I know it can feel quite, I know when the pandemic started, it did feel like it was only us, but it has been so many other people. And I think it's important to use this time to build these packages and build value for visitation for visitors when they return to the region. So as an example, let's say you're an accommodation provider and you're going to do, for everyone who comes to stay, or the first 20 people who come to stay, they get a $10 or a $20 voucher for the restaurant down the road. Well, now's the time to work out how that works. So you need to work out with the restaurant, do they present a voucher? Is it a physical voucher? How is the voucher distributed? Is it in the check-in compendium, or is it on the pillow? So how do those sorts of things work? Is the restaurant happy to do that? Is it co-branded? So creating those marketing assets and having them ready to go so that when those first 20 visitors come, you know that they're getting the $20 voucher. You know that that's what's happening and that's your package. And organising it now is so important, because there just won't be the time or the headspace once we can get back to business, or it becomes, we're all back on. I wanted to touch on this because this was one of the questions, and it's certainly one that I've been asked a lot over this time. And it's, what if your community doesn't want visitors? And I do really understand this position. A lot of people are concerned about people traipsing, the germs and bringing them into regional communities who otherwise haven't been affected. So what do you do if you're in this position? My view is that we all have a responsibility to educate the community of the safety and the cleaning measures that we're putting in place, and what we're doing to keep the regional community, out of COVID-19. And it's your job as an operator to build confidence around what the reopening will look like. If you are showing commitment to safety measures and you are articulating what they are, it is going to build confidence. And from where I sit, confidence builds internally first. So if your staff are confident with the measures in place, they are going to spread that word to their friends and family within the region. And then you can start to do a more external piece with your local community. So from there, you can start to engage with them. You can explain what you're doing and have messages that go to your local community about what you're doing. As far as marketing and messaging goes, for anyone who's working in a region who's anti-tourism at the moment, it starts slow. You don't need to come back with the biggest whiz-bang marketing campaign, inviting people from all over the world to come. That's not relevant. Start with messaging, encouraging family and friends to visit. So if I was you, where I would sort of start is by appointment only. So that's where I'd start is advertise that small groups. Then from there, invite your friends and family to come and visit your experience. I think that a lot of people have sort of tapped out in regional areas. I know I'm working with one at the moment where a lot of the accommodation providers don't think that they'll be able to market to a visiting friends and family a VFR market. And to that I think there's probably more opportunities now than ever before for accommodation providers with the VFR market, because what we know is that none of us have seen our family who've been interstate for more than 3 months, and people are getting very used to their isolation now. So there could be a lot of opportunities coming out that people, when they go and visit their friends and family, might not actually want to stay with them. They certainly want to see them, but isolation has been quite nice for a lot of us with our family. So I think there's some opportunities in there that we could get some clever marketing to that VFR market. If you're in this position where you're feeling that there is a lot of angst around you, or you're not sure even how to reopen in this market, please get in touch with the team at Visit Murray, because there's lots of strategies that can be put in place, or lots of reopening action plans that we can assist with as well, because everyone's circumstances are so different in this. And if you just don't even know where to start, please don't feel alone. Please reach out. I am really conscious of time, and we're sort of coming up to that 45 minutes, and I want to save enough time to do those questions. So I'm going to leave this little next section probably for next week, which is how to set up your website to become a sort of e-commerce specialist. So how do you get people through to your checkout faster? So I know this was one of the questions that someone had sent through. So, but I will save it over to next week, so we have enough time to do the in-person Q&A if that's okay. So I'll save that for next week and just fly through these slides. So basically next week I will take you through what it looks like and how to find those content keywords, how to make sure that you're what people are searching for is what you're delivering, and how do we create that funnel on your website. But I wanted to sort of leave with this kind of message for those of you who can't trade yet, or can't trade for the foreseeable future. And it's, don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. So you have to be planting these marketing seeds and getting these materials ready, because we will be able to trade again. Yes, it will be staggered. Yes, it will be in different phases, but it's what you organize now. And those seeds that you plant now are going to have the harvest in whether it's next month, whether it's from 1 June for you, whether it's from 1 July, October, November, who knows, for your particular business. But it's the hard work that you put in now that is going to pay off then. So please, I really couldn't encourage you enough to get onto this marketing, to get what you're going to be pushing out into something that is just ready to go when you can. I wanted to share, if you haven't seen, the government has provided these, their graphic design posters that you can put around your premises that has things about stopping the spread, covering your mouth, where to find hand sanitizer, those kinds of things. They're great if you don't have, if you need to put signs like that up in your property. They've done all the graphic design work for you. They're free, download and printable. Fantastic resource. For more assistance, I'd strongly recommend doing a marketing audit of your business. We have on our website a free download that you can do a self-assessment to see where those gaps are, because there's lots of marketing tools that probably you do have in existence that you've probably forgotten about. I know when I do this exercise, I always forget about the corporate stationery I had printed and never give out. So that's always a good reminder to dig that out of the drawer. So it's just a free tool to see what you've got in market and what you could update. But I'll stop sharing my screen so we can go straight into those questions, because I've seen a couple of things pop down in the chat. If anything's come up, please drop it into either the Q&A or the chat, to the chat now. So Mark, there's one in here that's probably better for you to handle, which is, can New South Wales tourists stay overnight in Victoria? I'll pass to you on that one.
Thanks, Hannah. So obviously at the moment, the only reason that people can stay in Victoria is for work purposes, caregiving, not for leisure. So at the moment, no. We are hoping that in the not too distant future we'll see some announcements around that. But certainly at this point in time, tourists can't stay. The other third reason, is if they don't have a permanent residence. So we do have some people staying across the region, I know, that don't have a permanent residence, and they've been able to accommodate in region. But other than that, no, at this point in time, not an option. We're hoping it's not too far away. But again, we'll just have to wait for those formal announcements from a health perspective.
So we've got a question here. Can you be more specific about what goes into the action plan for our guest experience? So absolutely. There is, in the government template, they have, I would suggest working through that, and it's got for things you should do before a crisis, things if so before people arrive, when people arrive, and if someone arrives with COVID-19, what are your isolation measures for them? What are your cleaning measures for after that? So they're just a couple of examples. But what I'd be doing is I'd be looking at all the questions that you have and all the things that we know have been, I guess, hot topics. And I certainly do this in my business, and start to make a plan around those. So for me, social distancing is a nice obvious one. So we know we've been told to social distance. Well, what does that mean? So what I'd be doing, as an example, let's say I was an accommodation provider, I was a caravan park. How am I going to promote social distancing? So I go, okay, well, I can't have everyone, I'm going to have to put people in every second site for probably 3 months, maybe, let's say that's my action plan. So what I need to do is I need to block out those sites. How does that work? How am I going to block them out? Then I'd look at things like, okay, well, the community kitchen. So I'm going to need a sign that says you can only have 3 or 4 people in the community kitchen at one time. Okay, the fire pit's another hot spot. We've got 20 chairs. I need to take 10 away. So I'd start making your plan that way. So the prompts in that government safety plan document are fantastic. They've got lots of ideas in there. So that's what I'd look at. But I think it's specific for each business and exactly what you do. So, in my office, it's much more simple. As you walk through the door, it's a pump of hand sanitizer. If you feel ill, please leave immediately. So it's quite a simple one to handle, but it's obviously a lot harder in a bigger business with a lot more people coming and going. So I hope that answers that one.
Just on that point, we've had quite a lot of discussion with both state agencies as well around this, and certainly there's some good initiatives coming out through industry sectors. So I know a range of the industry associations are working on some more specific elements relevant for their industry type, and we're also expecting in the next week to 10 days some further insights across high-level actions that businesses can take specific to those sectors. So both state governments have been working strongly with a range of industry sectors and some task force to actually feed information in. And certainly I'd actively encourage, if there is specific questions, we're happy to take those on board and feed those up into those task force looking at some of those opportunities.
I think as well, knowledge sharing is great. Like in this area. Mark, you gave a great example yesterday to me just on the phone that I've been able to share this morning, which was about automating a check-in process. So there was a bottleneck in an accommodation provider around check-in. So how do they move most of that to be pre-filled information before people arrive, which has been a piece of information I've now been able to share to someone. So I think if you've got a great solution, please, I'm sure there's industry groups or Facebook private groups or things like that, or just even the local community that you can share that with, because everyone has to make these. My understanding is everyone has to make their own rules for their own area themselves, how they're going to police it, because no one will come in and separate the people for you. If social distancing isn't being observed in your property, that's your responsibility as the management to police that within your own business. So just set it up so you don't have to be moving people apart, and suggesting it would be the best thing is, prevention is always the best solution if you can just mitigate even getting to there. Mark, we've got another question for you. Can visitors go from Victoria and travel to stay overnight in New South Wales?
Thanks, Hannah, and thanks for the person who raised that question. It's been one that we've been chasing down this morning. So the advice is obviously respective to each state. So at the moment in Victoria, the only reasons you can travel are for work purposes, caregiving, or you can do a day trip to visit friends and relatives. So at the moment, no, Victorians can't go and travel and stay overnight in New South Wales unless it's for those reasons. So leisure visitors certainly aren't allowed to do that at this point in time. Again, we look forward to when that can occur. But at the moment, really, it is up to the resident of Victoria, obviously, to comply with the relative state legislation. So at the moment, if they were travelling legitimately for business, then obviously they could stay in New South Wales, or if they were legitimately giving caregiving. But other than that, from a leisure perspective, no, they're not able to do so.
Does anyone else have any other questions that they'd like to drop in? We've got 4 minutes left, so if anyone's got anything they want to pop in, please drop it down. So I think, given the difference on the two different states' positions, it is so important now to get that messaging right and get those databases segmented. So if you've been asking people to fill out on your website their postcode for years, it's having those two separate sends is going to be really important, because you will be doing a staggered start now, which was what we were sort of hoping to avoid. But it is what it is, isn't it? Does anyone have any other questions?
As well, we've also got South Australia is still closed as a border at the moment. So in terms of that approach, again, it's just really relevant that you understand, going back to what you said last session around understanding your customer and being really focused on who that customer is that you're wanting to target is more important than ever.
If you've got any questions about defining your target audience, I wrote a blog post on it, which is available on my website. It's quite handy because I think I've asked a lot of the questions that if you was doing a one-on-one with me, what would I ask you? Which is who comes, who doesn't come, who do you want to have more of, who do you want to have less of, what are you doing to target those people? So it's a really great resource if you're just sort of not sure. It's very simple. It's got a one-page download form to fill out as well if you want to sort of target create it. I think there's a lot of people get bogged down in the target audience and make it more complex than it needs to be. Someone's got a great suggestion to share with the group. The Qantas report that came out yesterday via email has good examples of how to present social distancing in your business. So if anyone hasn't seen that, that's a great recommendation from someone in the industry. Thank you for sharing. Well, if we don't have any other questions, next week...
and there's just one more that's just come in down the bottom.
Oh, yep. If you launched a new campaign just prior to lockdown, where do you go from here? Great question. If it could be picked up and reused, absolutely, I'd put it back into market, but I double check all of your messaging to check it's okay. So, brilliant example. Even Tourism Australia, do you remember they launched that incredible Kylie Minogue campaign in the UK? It's $122 million worth of media buy. and it was right before the bushfires, and they had to pull it, and then they had COVID-19, but they're not putting the $120 million. They're not just parking that will come back into market. So that happens to the best of us. So what I would do is I'd pick it back up, throw it straight back into market, but provided your messaging is okay, and just timing that. What we know is people, really touching on that customer sentiment, and there's so many sentiment reports out there. Every single person is sending a sentiment report, and if you're not sure what the customer sentiment is right now, just type into Google tourism customer sentiment Australia. You will get every result under the sun. People are scared, they're worried about money, they're worried about health standards. So if your campaign is flippant about any of those things, I would just rework it, and maybe either potentially park it for another time, or reinvigorate it if it's the right messaging.
And I think just on that topic, it's around whether it was a call to action or an awareness campaign too. So certainly there's a lot of people looking at those opportunities, but the research again shows that at best, even when restrictions are lifted, we're looking at a 3 to 6 month lag from when people will really be comfortable to travel. So again, it's going to be those small steps that importantly taking in the process.
Yeah. Donna has very kindly reminded me that the next session is not next week, it's in the next fortnight. Thank you, Donna. So it's Wednesday, the 3rd of June, lunchtime format again. Perfect. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'll stop this recording, and then we'll send you a copy of the slides and also the digital recording, so you can follow along.